Yeah, it's my pleasure to introduce Becca Sutphin, who I've, in my volunteer duties with United Way, got the chance to work with Becca. And, a lot of people, we all have jobs, but Becca has a true heart for what she does. And, she's sort of the hero behind the scenes that a lot of people are not aware of. But before I go into Becca, um, Danelle Glasscock was supposed to be here today, the current executive director of United Way, and unfortunately her father is not doing the best. So if everyone could please keep their family in your thoughts and prayers. And on another little piece of news with United Way, Danelle is retiring, and they'll be having a celebration of that this coming Thursday at the social.
Or Tailored.
At Tailored Venue Event, sorry about that. And Joshua Mullins, no relation to me, he will be the new executive director of United Way starting, I think, the 23rd. So just a little bit of background on United Way. And Becca, I'll go into her bio here, but she is the Senior Director of Community Impact for the United Way of Greater Kingsport. She sees all the community impact work dealing with homeless and several other situations within the community. She's been doing this for 10 years. She's originally from Rhode Island, graduated from the University of Rhode Island with a bachelor's degree in animal science and technologies and a minor in leadership. During college, she was a resident assistant, lifeguard, member of the Rhode Island tennis team, and cadet in the Army ROTC program. I know that's near and dear to Pat's heart, so I think she's one of his favorite people. And I've not been brave enough. I'm an old college tennis player as well, but I've not been brave enough to play back in tennis. So, but upon graduation, Becca was commissioned as an environmental science officer in the Army Medical Service Corps. She served on active duty for 6 years and was stationed in Germany, Iraq, and Maryland, and served in the West Virginia National Guard for 2 years. In her free time, she could be found working out at the YMCA, playing a little doubles on the tennis courts, or exploring a lovely new hiking trail in Northeast Tennessee. So, we encountered a hurricane a few years back, Hurricane Helene, and we saw the community come together. And I talk about somebody working behind the scenes. Becca was extremely instrumental in that, organizing all of that. And a big hats off to her for that. So, but with that, I will shut up and let Ms. Becca come forward and do her presentation. Everybody, I'll stand and give her a round of applause.
Thank you. Wow. Thank you. A standing round of applause. Okay, maybe we'll see how I do first. Brent, thank you for that introduction. But I have to say, if I could maybe choose another introducer, it might have been Mr. David Light. For those of you who may have been introduced by Dave before, I might be introduced as the gorgeous, the talented, the wonderful, the remarkable, et cetera, insert whatever word of choice. So it's my pleasure to be here today. And it's a real honor. So I am going to be sharing a little bit with you guys today about Alice. And I think I heard some murmurs. Who is Alice? Where is she? I'm curious. I want to meet her. What's going on? But I thought before I share the data and the numbers with you guys, I might entertain you with an activity. And at your table, there are a couple sheets in front of you, and there's also some Smarties. And so what I challenge you to do, and it can be, in partnership with the person sitting next to you, or if you have enough to go ahead and have your own adventure, go ahead and do that. But what you see in front of you are a series of different needs that are all important, that are all integral to our daily lives, that sometimes we take for granted that we have, that we can access, that we can, cover those needs. And, what this conversation here today is about is just being able to maybe further understand how you might have some neighbors that are having some hard choices about covering a food need when they might have a medical need or they might have a childcare need. And so just roll with me here. We won't spend too much time, but just imagine, if you can, that your family's just trying to get by. And you have 15 candies that are representative of your family budget that you have to allocate. So I want you to be thinking, okay, you are married, you have 2 children, and one of those kiddos is school age and one is younger than 5. And one adult works full time while the other one works 2 part-time jobs. So go ahead and really quickly spend those 15 Smarties across those different categories that you see there, allocating at least 1 Smartie per category. Ready, set, go. And don't dilly-dally because I don't have a lot of time. What? Up and down. So each one of those lines from bottom to top should have at least 1 Smartie in them, depending on your choice of those various different topics. You're kind of choosing a low, medium, high. And I see some people munching. I hope you're not eating your Smarties, so you might regret that. Okay, you've got 1 more minute. Allocate those Smarties. Okay, if Gail's done, are y'all done? No.
There was only 14 candies, so I think, but I've identified mine.
Okay.
I'm flexible.
You're so good.
I watch you carefully.
Okay, we're finishing up. But you know what? Uh-oh. Something unexpected happened. Your spouse has a bad toothache. They must go see the doctor. But you know what? They went to the emergency room and they have to pay some out-of-pocket expenses. You must take 2 candies off the board. What 2 candies would you take? Tough decisions were made. But wait, there's more. Your spouse just got laid off from one of their part-time jobs because they had to take that time off to go get their dental needs met. Now remove 4 candies from the board. 4. It's a part-time job, Gail. 4. And lastly, due to your community support and the community support of United Way of Greater Kingsport, Friends in Need and Appalachian Miles for Smiles are available to help families in the Greater Kingsport community. And because of these agencies, you get reimbursed 2 candies. And that concludes this very brief activity, and I know we're having fun with this. We're being lighthearted about this. We're eating Smarties. But really, this helps show and demonstrate very hard choices that our neighbors and friends and family members are having to make each and every day. And that's Alice. That's what I want to talk to you about further. So if you have never heard of this term before, and I would actually be curious, aside from maybe Brent and a few other board members, has anyone else heard of the term Alice before? A couple hands. Very good. Very good. Okay. And now you all have. So Alice stands for Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed. So this is, let's say, kind of a revived term that when we didn't have this term, it was the working poor. You know, this is the struggling middle class. There's a lot of people in our community that fall under this term, and we're going to talk about that a little bit today. And so for a little bit of background, this actually started in New Jersey. This was a groundswell, this was a grassroots movement to challenge kind of the status quo of the only way to really talk about who's struggling is the federal poverty level. So when you think of those in the community that are really maybe those that you view as being low income, don't have a lot, you think federal poverty, you think SNAP, you think child care vouchers, you think all these things. But there's another population in our community that's struggling that may not qualify for those types of benefits and supports. And that's really what this whole effort was trying to do, shed a light on a population that really wasn't being talked about. And so over the years, you can see various different states that came online, and Tennessee subscribed to this Alice framework back in the 2018 era. So we got our first dose of data that was relevant to Tennessee right before COVID, really. And so it was really helpful to be able to see a whole nother level of insights about what was going on in our state, but not just in our state, in our county, in Sullivan County, even in zip codes. You can drill down into the 37660 zip code, and you can learn more about those right here in our community that fall under Alice. And there are some categories of what a budget looks like under this Alice framework. And under each one of these categories, there is a definition of what that includes. There is a valid resource of where the data then gets mined and comes from. And so the purpose is to really be able to look at this as, you know, a piece of really helpful information. Maybe you're in public policy, maybe you're on different boards, you know, maybe you can advocate for those in your community. And this framework really does help communicate a lot of information that you might not know and you might not really understand until you get into it. So as we look at trends, I'll show you Tennessee and then I'll show you Sullivan County. What this graph is depicting is kind of that line at the state level of where poverty is and then where this population, Alice, is. And you can see some percentages across the bottom there that show you pretty much that percentage really hasn't changed over the last decade. You know, there's still a good number of households that live in poverty, and there's also a number that is ticking upwards that is in the Alice framework or below. And now let's look at that a little bit closer in Sullivan. So you can see a little bit more movement in Sullivan just because of, the sheer numbers that we're talking about here. Oh, sorry, my slides. I think there's a timer on this that is invisible to me. So anyway, bear with me as it jumps around. But you can see here in Sullivan County, we see the number of households on this column. So we're talking about right around just shy of 10,000 households that are in poverty in Sullivan. And then right around 22,000 households that are ALICE or below. Is this surprising to anyone so far?
Becca,
Ma'am?
Does the Alice and below include that lower line as well, or is the Alice just the delta between?
It's the delta between the two most notably, but when we talk about those in our community that are having a hard time making ends meet, we have to be inclusive of those in poverty.
Okay.
But yes.
So the number is really 30-something, closer to 30-something thousand.
And I might have that pie chart here coming up if depending on my order. Okay, it's further on in my slides. I have this slide too that probably there's a lot of people that understand this a little bit better than myself, but basically everyone talks about inflation, right? And the cost just over time, inflation is getting higher. What does that mean? Well, there's some information here on this slide that I think is important at the end of the day. So that top blue line is called the ALICE Essential Index at the state level. Then followed by that, you see a red line about the ALICE Essential Index in our region. And then the orange line is the ALICE Essential Index nationally. Below that final dark blue line is your consumer price index. And so I think sometimes when, that term inflation gets talked about, they're talking about a whole lot of goods, over 200 goods and services that most of those a financially insecure household isn't accessing, cannot afford. But really, where the rubber meets the road is in that ALICE Essential Index, recognizing that those most basic needs, those key grocery store items, those essentials are what is getting the most increase over and above in time. And so we did an activity with our board of directors last week where we had a very simple shopping list. It was eggs, cheese, meat, something else, bread maybe. What was that cost in 2019 versus what is it now in 2026? Percentage-wise, does anyone want to take a guess on what increase someone would see in their shopping cart in those 6-7 years? What percentage has those goods increased?
30%, 40%.
Yeah, between 30 and 40%, right around 32%. So that's huge for these families, And so I just think it's important as we talk about this and we advocate for these families to know that hard choices are continuing to be made. And there is one example that was shown to me in the data just to kind of hit this a little bit finer. It said, for example, in 2010, child care workers in Tennessee earned a median wage of $8.44 an hour. Okay, if they worked full-time, they earned $17,000 a year. And that was still falling short of what's described as a survival budget for that same family with one adult and one school-age kid. But by 2023, the median wage for a child care worker in Tennessee increased by 56%, up to $13.21 per hour, making it $27,000 annually full-time. Yet, that annual household survival budget for one adult and one school-aged child in Tennessee also grew. And so that left the same essential worker $14,000 short of basic costs, further behind than where they were in 2010. So these things matter. Every dollar matters. Every choice matters to our Alice families. I have an overview of just the breakdown. A lot of people like to kind of peel back the onion on this topic. So not only do I have the state data on households, those working full-time, hourly, full-time salary, part-time hourly, etc., those that are retired within their community, and those that are not in the labor force. I know that as we're looking through this, you're going to see that these percentages at the state level actually mirror. I know it might be a little harder to see at the Sullivan County level. These pretty well mirror each other. And yes, we all want to have those in our community work who are able to work. Absolutely. We also have to recognize that there are families that are having to make hard choices between one person working and one person staying at home and providing childcare, or one person working and one person who might have a disability that prevents them from being able to work. And so all of these different factors are important when we look at the households in our community and recognizing one income. It's really hard to get by with one income in a household, especially when there are children involved. And here's, again, a little bit more information. And so as we talk and we look at Alice, we also recognize that Alice workers, they tend to kind of fall into these categories as they're called the maintainers. So there's a whole list up here of what are considered our top types of occupations across the state. And according to 2023 data, and I know this is the most recent that we have access to, 14 of those top 20 jobs do pay less than $20 an hour. And that $20 an hour component is just something that when we actually get into an example of what a survival budget is, you'll see that $20 an hour minimum wage take home for that family is pretty much what most families need just to get by. And you can see here, there's different types of workers, everything from personal care aides, those that work in retail, office clerks, all of these, and their respective number of employees in the state and what those percentages are. And this is where we are in Sullivan County. So we have about 55% of our households are above that Alice threshold. I mean, that's more than half. That's, if we want to try to look optimistically, that is more than half. But we do have 31% that is in that Alice in between, as Gil alluded to, and 14% that are in the federal poverty guidelines. And a further breakdown of this, just again, by the numbers, by the households, you can see in Sullivan, we have roughly 22,000 households that are 65 and over. We have another 15,000 that are families with children, and almost 30,000 that are single or cohabitating. And you can see the breakdown of that darkest color is your poverty level, followed by the Alice, followed by above Alice. And so you can see that can kind of change depending on the demographics. And this is going to be hard to maybe see in the background, but this is an example of what a survival budget in Sullivan County can look like. And so they've taken, again, a lot of great data that is pertinent to Tennessee, and they've broken down average cost based on household size and demographics. So for that single adult, even as you're looking here, you're like, $649 for housing. Does that seem low, maybe? So some of these numbers still seem a little bit conservative. Granted, we're a couple years out. And you can see down through here, childcare, food, transportation, healthcare, technology. At one point, you might have thought smartphones, like that's a luxury. Not right now. That's an essential item. Everything from if you want to apply for a job to figure out where to go for pretty much anything, you have to go online. You have some miscellaneous categories, kind of a catch-all, taxes, monthly total. So that annual total just to cover basic needs for single individuals, $26,000 a year. Hourly wage is $13.47. If you add a child to the mix, you are getting into that $20 an hour category. As you look at this, what category is missing?
I can't read it from here, but is senior citizens up there?
Oh yes. As far as I mean as you're thinking about your budget. If you're thinking about maybe your own household. No savings. As you guys just experienced in the Smarty exercise, you might have a goal as you're starting out to go ahead and put some money aside in savings. When rubber meets the road, when you have that unexpected cost, oftentimes Alice families do not have savings to go to. So they're having to make those very, very critical, hard choices. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about people that don't have a natural buffer like you and I in the room might have. And in summary, I know we talked about a lot. I know I probably went pretty fast for you all. We have a lot of great resources in Kingsport. I mean, I serve alongside and work with wonderful partners each and every day who are stretching their dollars farther and farther to do the most good. We have great programming, especially in the children and youth area, but childcare, I think everyone knows that continues to be an issue that is getting a lot of attention, a lot of focus. What more can be done, not just on access, but affordability and quality, and you don't want to sacrifice any of it. When it comes to transportation, I know that this is also a topic that is challenging in our community. We're grateful we have CATS, we have NetTrans regionally, but there's still those issues that come up as far as that consistent option to get people to work, especially if they're working off hours or if they're working on the weekends. It's just, there are definitely gaps. And then when you talk about affordability, Lyft and Uber, they're not affordable options for this population. When it comes to housing, affordable housing is definitely another buzzword topic in our community. We're working alongside Kingsport Housing and other entities to really dive further into that, to understand what more can be done to allow for housing to be more affordable and sustainable for these families over time. Food, many of you in the room know Susan Lodahl. She's been a longtime volunteer with United Way, but you might not know we have a whole website that's dedicated to keeping up with food resources in the greater Kingsport area, and that's called feedkingsport.org. So it lists all the food pantries here within the community, and it's updated twice a year. And that's thanks to generous people like you guys in our community who, again, are giving because you know there is need, but you might not necessarily know who's opening that door to your blessing box. It might not be the person who you think it could be. And then healthcare. I know we mentioned it today in our example. Friends in Need, Appalachian Miles for Smiles, Providence Medical Clinic. There's many giving entities that we're blessed with in our community, and just know that those folks are working really hard to serve this population, to make sure that what could be, picked up with a preventative health kind of care could actually be better addressed than, say, having to respond to something emergent if someone has something like an abscessed tooth. Prevention goes a long way in the healthcare arena. And, it's our goal with United Ways, with this data, to come alongside and engage the community, engage local companies. Are there ways that we can look at some of these problems and issues just with more information? Have we polled, the employees about maybe something that could be of true help to them? I'll do a shout out to Goodwill in the back there. I know Daryl's here, working alongside Morris. I know they've done some really neat intentional work with their own workforce to be very people focused. They have a bottom line. Yes, they need to open the stores. Yes, they need to do this, but they're also touching base with those workers to actually say, okay, you're late for the second time, but what else is going on? Can we have a conversation about your transportation needs? Can we figure this out? What's going on? So not this 1 to 3 strikes and you're out, but an actual conversation about what's going on within their household. And in conclusion, just thank you for your time. Thank you for your interest. I hope this was helpful. I hope that some of this information allows you to maybe think a little bit differently, but still lean in generously. And if there's anything that I can do as you learn more about this, I did put the website unitedforalice.org on here. I think there might be some data-minded people who would love to look at the next level of information. So please go on that website, and I'm happy to entertain any questions